Olivia Cachoian-Schanz, the head of the International Armenian Literary Alliance, and I'm so glad you're all here for our reading of Queer Armenian Literature. We have an incredible lineup of writers and poets to share their work with you from the United States, Canada, Italy, and Armenia. I encourage you to support and uplift their work, which you can find more about on our website. In honor of Pride Month, IALA is proud to partner with Hye-Phen magazine and the Queer Armenian Library for today's reading and a panel discussion next Saturday on the development of queer Armenian literature over the last several decades. As far as I know, this is the first global reading dedicated to queer Armenian writers, and I'm so excited that IALA is able to facilitate this momentous occasion. We intend for it to be the first of many events dedicated to celebrating queer Armenian literature. We're committed to empowering diverse identities within our community, and I hope you will all join us as writers and readers. I also hope you'll join us afterwards for an informal storage and conversation hour so we can get to know each other and continue to build a queer Armenian literary community. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce a powerful writer, the founder of the Queer Armenian Library and one of IALA's board members, JP Davoudian.
Thank you, Olivia. I am really excited to be here today for this particular reading. When 4 years ago, I started to try to put together a collection, a library of queer Armenian writers. I had no idea that it would lead, hopefully, I had no idea that it would lead to this point. So I'm very excited that we are here today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the great work from our writers here. I've obviously got a chance to read their work in the past, and if you haven't had a chance to read their work, please visit the queerarmenianlibrary.com. You can also visit us on social media, which is now a thing for the library. Read the QAL on Twitter or on Instagram. And also this week, we became an affiliate of bookshop.org. So we have a store that's linkable through the library's website that you can go to bookshop.org. And several of the books from the library are available for purchase there. And being an affiliate member, that allows you we receive a commission, which allows you to support the library and also support independent bookstores as opposed to Amazon. So please sign up for the content for the newsletter, because we will let folks know when new materials are added to the Queer Armenian Library. And we are really excited to be able to co-sponsor with IALA events like our reading today and the panel next week. So again, now, without further ado, I will turn it over to our MC and host, Kami Abrahamian.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Kami Abrahamian. I am an interdisciplinary writer, artist, producer, performer, organizer, and a caregiver. I grew up in an immigrant suburb of Toronto, and I currently live on the stolen lands of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe peoples, living adjacent to the Mohawk community of Tyendinaga. It's really important for me to acknowledge that I'm a visitor here, especially as a diasporic Armenian whose family was displaced from their ancestral homelands. I'm really excited to be here representing Hye-Phen, and a little bit about Hye-Phen. It first launched in 2014, and it operates today as a fully independent, queer, Armenian-run digital media platform and publishing collective. And our intention is to carve out space that celebrates free expression, the sharing of histories, imagining utopia, and dismantling dystopia in and beyond the Armenian community. So first up is none other than Mashinka Firon-Sagopian, who is a writer, a researcher, an artist, born in Yerevan and based in Glendale, California. She will join Occidental as a visiting Mellon professor in the practice this fall. Her book, Algorithmic Bias Training, Lectures for Intelligent Machines, is forthcoming in 2021 from X Artists Books. Welcome, Mashinka.
Thank you so much, Kami, for that introduction. And thank me and Nancy and JP, Olivia, IALA, Hye-Phen, and the Queer Armenian Library for organizing this reading and for making this space of community building possible. It's much needed, as we all know. I want to preface my reading by acknowledging that I'm delivering it from Utah as a visitor in the ancestral unceded homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute peoples. I'm reading something today for the first time, not because the material is new, but because it's exceptionally old. It's from a novella that I wrote almost 20 years ago, titled The Beauty Secrets of Margarita Morozova, which was published in a very small print run by Persefassa Small Press in 2005, with an introduction from the director, Guy Madden. The novella is a kind of tribute to Alla Nazimova, a Soviet actress who emigrated to the first only queer silent movie queen in Hollywood. She famously played the archetypal vamp and became a kind of screen for Hollywood's orientalized projections of the East. And I'm reading from her home, as you can see here, at 8080 Sunset, which was known as the Garden of Alla, where she built a pool in the shape of the Black Sea and would host lavish pool parties for other queer women in Hollywood, who became known as the 8080 Club. She was at one time the highest paid actress in Hollywood. Then she used the fortune that she'd amassed to fund a film version of Oscar Wilde's Salome, for which she hired a reportedly all-gay cast. And it's now an icon of early queer cinema, but at the time it spelled her financial ruin. So growing up in Glendale as a post-Soviet Armenian queer, the story of a queer Soviet film icon gripped me. And I first learned about her after regularly sneaking in the back door at the 1920s theme night Bricktops, which was run by Vaginal Davis at the Parlor Club, a queer nightclub in West Hollywood. And I think one of the participants here was one of my partners in crime in sneaking in. At the time, as a teenager in Glendale, it never occurred to me in the early 2000s that I might be reading this text one day at a queer Armenian literature reading. So for that, I'm very grateful to IALA and the Queer Armenian Library and Hye-Phen. Okay, and with that, I'll launch in black and white in tribute to Alla. The silent Muscovite movie queen smoked only Russian imported cigarettes in Los Angeles. As a child, the first femme fatale of American cinema journeyed to the top of the first meteorological station in Europe by climbing the tapered end of a serpent's tail gown, so that when she had completed her ascent to the stars, she had sequins lodged underneath her fingernails. When something is very beautiful, we smile coquettishly and say, that is a fire hazard. Her black satin cocktail dress will outlive her. Juna Barnes saw Morozova once, and Juna knew how to recognize fire hazards and associated her immediately with danger. A brief composition on the female spectator from The Inscription of Femininity as Absence by Mary Ann Doan, who postulates that the desire of the female spectator for the female object of the gaze is deflected into a more appropriate desire to become said object. Following this theory, carrying a cigarette holder that exactly resembles the one Morozova was photographed with is a more proper way of desiring her. And becoming the image, the woman can no longer have it. I am writing for Morozova now because all the women I have known have been ghosts. The only vulgar thing is to forget. In an attempt to avoid vulgarization, I remember only her. Very interesting reading something you wrote 20 years ago, Juvenilia. It seemed like the appropriate choice. And for a second and final piece, I'm going to read something more recent, a segment from my book manuscript, Algorithmic Bias Training, or Lectures for Intelligent Machines. So to offer a few words of context, the project bridges speculative fiction and media studies, imagining a future where artificial intelligences gather for lectures on equity that they deliver to one another. The piece responds to inequitable structures which are coded using biased data sets that lead to biased futures that exclude marginalized and vulnerable populations, including queer populations. So for example, a recent study from the University of Colorado showed that the vast majority of facial recognition systems overwhelmingly misidentify trans folks and have a 100% inaccuracy rate in labeling and identifying non-binary individuals because they're coded only to recognize binary gender. So I'll be reading an excerpt from the introduction. Let me begin with an anecdote that originated in the Soviet Union. To understand the anecdote, you only need to know that in the Armenian language, the phrase "inchkachka" is an idiomatic expression for what's new. It translates literally to what is there and what isn't there. The anecdote. After years of research under the cloak of secrecy, a team of computer scientists unveils a supercomputer designed as an omniscient repository of all the world's knowledge. It can process any request, instantaneously retrieve an answer, and print a response to any query with an accuracy rate of 100%. August experts and renowned technologists inspect the machine. They all agree it represents the most complete extant measure of human knowledge. A saying develops that if something doesn't exist in the supercomputer's datasets, then strictly speaking, it cannot be said to exist at all. News of the curiosity spreads. People travel from distant locales to ask it seemingly unanswerable questions. One day, an Armenian speaker visits. They examine the log of questions the machine has answered to date, and they are decidedly unimpressed. After considering possible queries, the Armenian speaker settles on asking the computer, "How are you?" in Armenian, "inchkachka," or literally, what is there and what isn't there. The supercomputer misinterprets every data point it's been storing, everything it knows. It starts churning data and works around the clock for hours and days, then weeks. After printing out endless reams of paper, the computer finally declares the task complete. It has retrieved what amounts to the entirety of the world's knowledge. The Armenian speaker reviews the materials, but they are once more dissatisfied. They pose another question. El inchkachka. Idiomatically, the phrase is equivalent to what else is new, or in literal translation, what else is there and what else isn't there. When it receives the query, the computer, already overtaxed from its weeks-long exertions, glitches and immediately bursts into flames. What does this anecdote tell us? 1, there were no Armenian-speaking computer scientists on the research team. 2, systems don't operate as they should when omissions and biases are encoded in their data sets. 3, world building proceeds by building repositories of knowledge. So if agents are involved in a process of producing the world, then what we are asking today, what we should be asking is, how can we produce the world otherwise? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mashinka. I wish we could take our, we're clapping our hands. Okay, next up is Naka. Naka is a poet, a feminist, an activist, a sister, a daughter, a friend, an immigrant, a lesbian, a teacher, a coffee cup reader, and a queer.
Thanks, Kami. So I actually wanted to introduce all my names to you. I'm Naka, Milena, Maral, Pavakan, what other name? Tadukhepa. And recently I'm Samantha because I'm an English teacher and I have to have an English name. I'm gonna read you something that I wrote last year when I visited a place in the western north part of Armenia called Lake Arpi. And I was really inspired by this place. There were a lot of abandoned kind of homes, and they were abandoned quite a long time ago. So they were broken apart a little bit. I wanted to share a photo, but I didn't know how to, anyway, I'm not gonna share that photo. I'm just gonna read. I wrote this originally in Armenian and then I translated it into English, and I've read it before and I really liked how it sounds when I read Armenian and English parallel to each other. Սահմանը սարի հետևից ամպեր է ուղարկում գլորվելով դեպի լիճը։ Սահմանը սարի հետևում թաքցնում է արևը։ Սահմանը գիշեր է առանց երևակայության, որը դանդաղ սողում է դեպի տան պատերը ու հրվում պատերին։ Հրում է պատերը, պատուհաններից կառչած։ Սահմանը պատուհանը կբացեր ու ներս կնետվեր։ The border sends clouds rolling down the lake from behind the mountain. The border hides the sun behind the mountain. The border is a night without imagination, slowly crawls towards the house and presses itself against the walls, pushes the walls, clings to the windows. The border would have opened the window and thrown itself inside. Ամպերը մթության մեջ սկսում են դողալ ու ամպրոպել, անձրև, լույսերն էլ տարան. The clouds start to shiver and thunder in the dark. Rain. The lights have also gone off. Սարի հետևում էլ լույս չկա, իսկ որտեղ առաջինը լույսերն անջատվեցին, այստեղ թե սահմանի մյուս կողմում, որտեղ առաջինը ամպերը գոռացին, այս մեր կողմում, թե այն նրանց կողմում, իսկ որտեղ ավելի շատ մարդ վախեցավ, իսկ որտեղ ավելի շատ մարդ մահացավ, իսկ որտեղ ավելի շատ, որտեղ ավելի քիչ. And behind the mountain, is there no light there too? Where did the lights turn off first? Here or on the other side of the border? Where did the clouds first growl? In this our side or in that their side? And where did more people become scared? And where did more people die? And where is it more? And where is it less? Այս տարածքում կիսաքանց տները բոլորովին տներ չեն։ Նրանք մասնատված ուրվականներ են։ Մեկը ուրվական մարմենի աջ կողմ է, մեկ այլը ուրվական մարմենի ձախ կողմ, մեկը աչի ձախը, մյուսը ձախի աչը, իսկ որոշների աչ ու ձախ կողմերը չես ճանաչի այնքան կամուրջի են վերածվել, այնքան ամուր են կանգնած քարե ոտնաթաթերի վրա։ Շատերը ընդամենը ոտնաթաթեր են, ընդամենը չէ, ամբողջությամբ մարմինը ոտնաթաթ է, ամուր կանգնած ու պատրաստ երբեք չլքելու այս տարածքը, որ մարմինի բոլոր մյուս մասերով լքել են։ The semi-destroyed houses in this place are not houses at all. They are disjointed ghosts. One is the left side of a ghost body. The other is the right side of a ghost body. One is the left of the right, the other the right of the left. Yet it can be impossible to recognize the left and right sides of some of these bodies. They have transformed so much into bridges. They stand so strong on feet made of rocks. Some are merely feet, not merely. Their bodies are whole feet, standing strongly and ready never to leave this site, which they have left with all other parts of their bodies. Թանգիկը ձախ ոտքիս ամբողջ երկայնքով տարածվող երակներով խոսում է առատ, թույլ չի տալիս մոռանալ իր մասին։ Ամռանը ավելի շատ կցավա, բայց ինչքան մեծանում եմ, այնքան ավելի շատ կզգամ իր ներկայության ծանրությունը ոտքիս մեջ։ Գիշերը տակը բարձ կդնեմ, որ սրտիս հետ խոսա, իսկ սիրտս, որն ընդամենը մարմնումս կբնակվե, ինձ չի պատկանա։ Նա կխոսե տատուս հետ, ով իր դուստրն է, ով ինձ իր ոտնաթացն է ժառանգել։ Tangik flows profusely through the veins, spreading all over my left leg. She doesn't let me forget about her. It hurts more in the summer, but the more I grow old, the more I feel the weight of her presence inside my leg. I put a pillow beneath her at night so she could speak with my heart. And my heart, which merely lives inside my body, won't answer me. It speaks to my grandmother, who is her daughter, whose feet I have inherited. Ես ոչինչ չգիտեմ Թանգիկի մասին, բացի այն, որ նա փախել է Վանից. I know nothing about Tangik except that she escaped from Van. Ջուրը մոտենում է ջրին, ասում է մի մոռացիր, ու կուլ է տալիս հիշողությունը. Water approaches water, whispers, do not forget, and swallows the memory. Այստեղ գրեթե հնարավոր չէ մոտենալ լճին. Կանաչ գույնի կայունությունը պատրանք է. Ամենականաչ խոտերի տակ ջուր է ու ցեղ, քաշում է ցած, ուլ է տալիս ներկան, ուլ տված անցյալով։ Ցեխերի այն կողմում հենց ափին նստած են մեծ սպիտակ թռչուններ եւ ես պիտի հասնեմ նրանց, մոտիկից տեսնեմ, համոզվեմ նրանց մեծության ու սպիտակ գույնի մեջ։ It's almost impossible to approach the lake here. The stability of the color green is an illusion. Underneath the most green grass, there is only water and mud. It pulls you under. It swallows the present with a past that has been swallowed. Large white birds sit on the other side of the mud, right on the shore, and I must get to them. I must see them up close. I must be assured of their largeness and of their white color. Շեղվում եմ չոր ճանապարհից, քարերի վրայով գնում եմ մինչև ոտքերիս տակ էլ քար չի մնում, ջուր է հոսում։ Տեղ-տեղ խոտ է, բայց գիտեմ, որ ոտքս կուլ կտա կանաչը, եթե սխալ քայլ անեմ։ Միևնույն է գնում եմ, խրվելով ցեխերի մեջ, հույս ունենալով, որ կուլ չեն գնա տատիկիցս ժառանգած ոտնաթաթերս, փախուստս ու տեղ հասնելու ցանկությունս։ I deviate from the dry path, walking on rocks until I get to a part where there are no more rocks left beneath my feet. Water flows, there is grass in spots, but I know that the green will swallow my feet if I take a wrong step. I go anyway, wallowing in mud, hoping that the feet I have inherited from my grandmother won't be swallowed, that my escape and my desire to get where I'm going also won't be swallowed. Ինչքան էլ չարչարվում եմ, միևնույն է սպիտակ թռչունները հեռվում են մնում, անհասանելի, անշոշափելի. The white birds stay in the distance no matter how much I struggle. They are inapproachable, intangible. Որոշում եմ հետ դառնալ. Նոր ցեխերի մեջ են ոտքերս խրվում, նույնիսկ քարերն են մնում ցեխի տակ։ Երբ այլևս դեպի լիճը չեմ շրջված, դիմացս կանգնած են իսաքանդ տները։ Իսախավարի մեջ տան ֆանտոմ պատուհաններից նայում են ուրվականները, բայց ոչ ինձ։ Նրանց հայացքները ձգվում են դեպի ջուրը։ Աչքերը լցված են լճի կարոտով, նրանք էլ ճամփա չունեն դեպի ջուրը։ I decide to go back. My feet get stuck in new mud. Even the rocks end up in the mud. The semi-destroyed houses stand in front of me when I am no longer facing the lake. Ghosts stare at me through the phantom windows of the houses in the semi-dark. Their gazes stretch toward the water. Their eyes are filled with yearning for the lake. They too have no path toward the water. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Up next, we have Deanna Cachoian-Schanz, who is a part-time literary translator, an avid postcard writer, and a nature enthusiast. She is midway through her PhD in comparative literature at the University of Pennsylvania. She researches collaborations and contestations of dissident ethnosexual Armenian and Turkish subjects through texts, bodies, and landscapes, 20th century to the present. She joins us today from Venice, Italy. Welcome, Deanna.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I had some tech problems before. Okay. So I'm going to read to you a chapter of a translation that I've made from a book called Girkan Verna Gir, or a book untitled. It was written by Shushan Avagyan and published in Yerevan in 2006. And just a brief idea of the book. The book itself is a novel, and it presents an imagined encounter between both Zabel Yesayan and Shoshani Khouyoumdjian. And this imagined conversation is juxtaposed with a conversation between the author and a friend of hers. The author's own meanderings on censorship, translation, and literature. The book is quite fragmented, and each of the titles bears the name of a poem written by Shoshani Khouyoumdjian. Today I'm going to read from chapter 7, which is called My Dear Sister, on the Occasion of Your Return. And just so you have some context about this chapter, it's a meditation on the city of Yerevan, fragmented then with a conversation between Yesean and Khordinian, who are meeting now in this chapter for the first time. So here the chapter starts to begin these, to blur the boundaries between like both the historic and the hegemonic historic and literary canons. And also talks about the censorship of both. So to this end, there are two Soviet interrogators who are featured in this chapter, and each of them are given hypothetical names. Instead of Soviet officials, the first one is Nishan Besiktaslian, who was an Ottoman writer, an Ottoman Armenian writer who settled in Paris. And the second one is Gostan Zaryan, who is also an Armenian intellectual and lyric writer from the Ottoman Empire. So, my dear sister, on the occasion of your return, Yerevan in the morning. The streets are still wet from the street sweeper machine's nighttime ritual. Everything is closed, the people still asleep. A true moment. But in 1926, that simple ritual of anointing didn't exist yet. Someone with a walking stick slowly roams through the city. One of the authors of this book. I know, you're still asleep, but I wanted to tell you, good morning. I called for another reason, of course, but just in case you want to know, the book has 4 authors. The sapling poplars are drenched in silver rays at sunrise. How I wish I were next to you when you awake. Sunlight pours through the curtains and floods the rooms. To hold your sleep-drenched face in my palm. Soon, the drilling of construction will be heard. And to touch the happiness you deprive me of. Stone-cutting machines will accompany the workers' baritone voices. A new city is being built. Young women and men are working. Their blue uniforms tightly hug their eager bodies. In one of the streets, the kindergarteners follows their teacher, single file. There are no ones and everyone's. The school children roughhouse in the classrooms before the bell. But you don't answer when I call. The metro cars rumble under the ground as they take the neatly dressed university students to the Yerida Sartagan metro stop. The foundations of the future buildings rise. You're not home when I knock on the door. Under the directive of the head architect, the southern and eastern walls are being built with a new line of unbreakable glass. You send back my postcards. The woman sitting in the cafe with an impatient face smokes her first cigarette of the day. An open notebook sits on her table. Someone with a walking stick slowly approaches her. 2 hands pressed together warmly. I finally see the image of the new woman. I see it, and I'm delighted by it that I see it. And when seeing it, I don't feel anything but delight. I only see, and I'm delighted. Everywhere you turn, she's there. Wearing sturdy black shoes, her hair plainly combed, with bright, fiery eyes and a broad, powerful chest. She's standing in front of the workers' station, in the library, on the half-constructed bridge, in the hospital, in the middle of the newly sowed field, in the university auditorium. She creates the new. She is our future. The future is hers. The new is created by her. Nada. It's not clear without an image on their faces. It'll be easier if we give names to the interrogators. First interrogator, Nishan Besiktaslian. Yes, people are going to need some time to think and imagine by thinking. It's impossible to remember everything. For example, the 1.5 postcard, or the faces of passerby on the sidewalk, or all the cities I've passed through. but it is impossible to forget Yerevan in the morning. The Catholicos poet doesn't like your raven black hair that jet out even unevenly along the latitudes of the mid-southeast. You're too irregular and black. The sadness of your eyes and impudent smirk are inaccessible to him. Your indifference, your distinctness. Let's give the second interrogator the following name, Gostanzaryan. It's important not to fall under anyone's influence, but rather to walk alone, like Kipling's cat along rocky and narrow roads. Let's assume that it was about this meeting. 2-5 manuscript. I'd heard about her and had admired her from afar. I look at her and imagine pressing her salt and pepper haired head to my breast. She seems to be frustrated by my scrutinizing gaze and tensely plays with her expensive rings. I look at them and want to read all the lines on her serious face. She turns towards me, surprised. Her charm not lost on me. She prattles gently. There are things from which a well-bred person refrains. I know that, I justify. Do you? And her withered lips trembled like autumn leaves. I look at her and I want to know if she's lived much, if she's searched long, if she's lost something prematurely, all too soon, from the innermost depths of her soul, of her heart. I want to know what she got in return, what she's learned from life's lessons, and when she arrived. She looks in surprise at my black, sunburnt face, and slowly a smile cracks from her lips. Perhaps you've lost something on my face? I've only found something, I answer resolutely. You did? They've already quietly turned their whole body towards me. As usual, I pull her towards me and press her tiny hand into my wide palm, incomprehensible writing, and our conversation. We agreed that I would be their personal typist and editor. 4 authors and 1 typist editor for all. Second interrogator. Your son has requested permission to visit you, so be smart and respond to my questions. First interrogator. The story's content is important only to give the reader direction, a pathway to reach a certain idea. Second interrogator. Of course, there are different ways and paths to arrive at that idea. Indeed, if we accept that the idea is definitive and within our reach. Second interrogator. What do you mean exactly by national activist? First interrogator. The traditional form of narration has its particular advantages. It doesn't require any particular effort on the part of the reader or audience, just like Hollywood films. Such linear stream of thought is constructed for only one purpose, to ease the process of perception. However, if we accept that there are variable ideas whose understandings require more than just one uniform reading, then the text drifts to the background and unresolved questions come to the fore. In a certain faraway city, there's a street. I think it's called Arami, which rumbles when the metro car passes underground. Aside from just having a name, the street is lined by old trees and has a hidden small pocket. Big old birches whose lower branches are trimmed. In the pocket are various works, 59 of which bear her handwriting, including a piece titled A Meeting. A meeting that will take place in an imaginary world. Hanging from the hem of a yellow tufa skirt, the pocket is very deep, and sometimes some writings get lost under the weight of others. And when the roots of the trees, petrified from the movements of the metro, gently touch the pocket's lining, in the spring, 1,001 mornings, 2 hands pressed together. Forgive me. Walking, I deviated from the path. The new buildings distracted me. the city took on a whole new appearance, a whole new form. Thank you.
Amazing, Deanna. Thank you. And next we have Audrey Kouyoumdjian, who has spent 22 years while secretly going from straight to gay, demonstrating her passion for positivity. As an author, physiotherapist, physiotherapy lecturer, and business entrepreneur, Audrey enhances the lives of her family, friends, patients, colleagues, and all the people around her who wish to find and embrace health.
Hello. Happy Pride. I am so excited to be here with you, celebrating Pride, because I can. You know, when I was young, I had dreams. I had dreams of getting a good education and loving my career. I had dreams of marrying a handsome Armenian man and having 3 children. I had dreams of living a healthy life and living happily ever after. And as I got older, I saw my dreams come true. I did become a physiotherapist. I did marry the man of my dreams, and I did have 3 children. What I didn't expect was to fall deeply in love with my girlfriend from university. What I didn't expect was to have an intimate relationship with her, and while married to him for 22 years. Living a secret life of guilt, shame, fear, love, and joy all at once. What I didn't know was secrets make you sick. When my health plummeted, I had an epiphany. I had a second chance of life to make things right. I had to become authentic, and I did. So following my coming out, I had to write this book. Straight to Gay, Coming Out, Save My Life, Creating Joy and Health. It took me 2 very therapeutic years to put 60 years of my life into 130 pages. Now I will recount 60 years of my life in just the next 10 minutes. Here goes. Chapter 1, Making Sense of It All. What's in a journey? Once upon a time is the beginning of a fairy tale. This is by far not a fairy tale because it's not a fantasy, but very real. It's an unexpected story during everyday life with unfamiliar lesbian love and unspeakable desire, fearful sickness and dark despair, helpless struggle, divorce, and needed change, with the ultimate gift of discovery and enlightened growth. This is my story of 60 years. It is a story of what I remember, my experience, my emotions, my memories, most of which I have seldom shared. Most recently, when I have revealed some of the brief highlights of my life, I am asked many questions with a sincere interest in my sharing every detail. I sometimes feel embarrassed and uncomfortable just thinking about some of the choices that I had made. My lesbian love affair while married to my husband was a deeply hidden secret for over 20 years. I didn't speak about my multiple sclerosis because I didn't want to give it a life. I still don't. I've struggled and I've made adjustments that I would have never expected to make. And now, because I've worked through my life's challenges, I've experienced so much and I'm ready to share what I've learned. I see that my genetic makeup, family life, education, hardships, losses, good times and bad, have been my best teachers, leading me through my journey towards creating true joy and better health. I feel that I have a story to share, and it needs to be told. Throughout the first chapter, with subtitles like Armenians Striving for the American Dream, I wanted the reader to notice that I felt a strong sense of family unity. And I ended the chapter by saying this: why is the first part of my story helping me to make sense of it all? In the first 20 years of my life, I was lovingly guided to follow my parents' lead, to be strong and independent, yet being their child to do as they wished. I was able to follow society's rules, be respectful, attend to responsibilities, participate in Armenian cultural activities, and build caring relationships while caring for myself. Were these initial teachings the building blocks for the next 40 years of growth, or would my genetic hardwiring at birth take me to new directions I would have never imagined? In chapter 2, Loving Him While in Love with Her, wait, what? After just meeting him the once, he seemed like he was everything I wanted. I saw a really nice, good-looking Armenian guy with great style. He wore black leather Italian shoes and carried a black man purse over his shoulder. My style. Many of my Armenian friends had known him for years and said he was from a really good family. I go on to write, deeply in love with him, deeply in love with her. My heart bulldozed towards the unknown, unexpected passion that made my head spin, and my double life with him and her began. Romantic candlelight dinners with him, conversations with her. He was loving, attentive, and handsome. She was so smart, exciting, and free-spirited. Stable, familiar city life with him, active, unfamiliar cottage life with her. Oh, I learned so much from him. I learned different things from her. Family times with him were spent with church, community, backyard parties, familiar traditions. Girlfriend times with her were full of sporting activities, soulful conversation, and new experiences. Back and forth, back and forth. I awkwardly stumbled when I didn't understand my feelings for her. As my secret life continued, my heart began to deteriorate, and in 1984, following medical assessments, my neurologist told me that I had multiple sclerosis and went on to say, do not have children, do not open a physiotherapy practice because your health and future are unknown. I plan to continue my lifelong dreams, and just 1 year later, we were blessed with a daughter. I soon opened my physiotherapy practice. I then wrote, through the years, when I've responded with, oh, I'm great, everyone who knows me says, you always say you're great. And I know in my heart that that's because I am great. They don't know how grateful I feel. I'm so fortunate to be as healthy as I am. Lucky me. I know that life is not just what happens to me, but how I react to it. As the year passed, every time I held her in my arms, I felt the unusual connection. And yet she continued to say she wasn't a lesbian and that our love was just love, wasn't special. I had so many questions and wanted to learn so much more. I was searching and searching to understand why I was feeling this way, this powerful connection. We had very long talks about our intense feelings and our needed love. I didn't want to think I was gay. There were too many reasons why I didn't want to be gay. If I was gay, I'd have to divorce my husband, and I certainly wouldn't want to do that. If I was gay, I'd have to tell my children. They wouldn't understand. As a matter of fact, I didn't understand. How could I expect anyone to understand? In chapter 5, In chapter 5, it was to the ER. Secrets can kill you. October 12th, 2001, surgery to remove half of my gangrenous colon. The scare created my epiphany, and I wrote, it was after she left, when the room was quiet, that millions of my thoughts went through my mind. I scanned the room, counting the many bouquets of flowers brought and sent with prayers of wellness. I pictured the faces around my bed, smiling and laughing, in hopes that I'd feel better soon. I cherished the warm love and support from my husband and daughters as they kissed me hello when they entered the room. And I couldn't forget her visit that prompted me to realize that it was time for me to become authentic with my family, with my friends, and with myself. Many chapters later, and now years later, here I am today, living happily ever after with my amazing partner of 20 years, Carol Pasternak. We've raised our 6 kids joyfully with our former husbands. We are the Gady Bunch. We are interested in learning more. If you're interested in learning more and would like to borrow my book from the Queer Armenian Library or buy it at the abelbooks.com or on Amazon, you can go ahead. Thanks for listening and giving me an opportunity to get my story out. I appreciate and I love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey. I'll never forget the Gady Bunch moving forward in my life. It's my favorite thing. Next we have Hrayr Khanjian, who publishes his poetry on Instagram. His poem Venus was recently published in Hye-Phen magazine. Hrayr is, my goodness, I'm so embarrassed. I can't read this word in Armenian. It's, please no one judge me.
It's probably made up. Medahayran.
Medahayran. Metaich? Is that right?
I don't remember. But yeah, I probably removed the vowels, yeah.
Okay. And Western Armenianist, Darorinagvads, queer faggot, empath, Yerchanik, Harry, Kingster, Wiz, Khargaser, flower, photographer from occupied Yelamu Ohlone territory, also known as San Francisco, and uses he, him pronouns. I'm sorry, Hrayr.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you, Kami. And thank you, everyone. I'm going to read 4 poems, and first in English and then in Armenian. December 31st. Before the sun is up, before the moon is down, New Year's Eve day, Venus twinkling along, brightening up this solitary year. Whatever happens, tomorrow morning, early, from our cloudless east, will greet us again. Red wispy clouds, tangerine dawn, tricolored. Good morning. Երեսունմեկ դեկտեմբեր. Արևը չելած, լուսինը չիչած, նոր դարվա քիշերվա օրը. Արուսյագը, մինագը բլբլացող, միայնակ այս տարին բլբլացնող. Ինչ որ ալլա, ինչ ըլլան է, ինչա ըլլա, ինչ որ ալլան է, Vaghardu, Ganuchen, Anam Merare Velken, Norengati Mavoren. Garmi Pedurain Amber, Naran Charsha Luisa, Yeraquin Yerevuita, Pari Luis. January 24th, Tevairak. In the pool of love around you, hearts unload, cleanse, replenish. Trust yourself. True to you. It can changing, always imparting, improving your life. Natural, normal, put them aside. Forget them. Compared to who? To what? Everyone is their own delicious oatmeal. Ksanchor Sunvar, Vairakin. Shurchit Sara Avazanne, Urser Dere Gbarbavin, Gemakrvin Ugeletzin. Ingzinkit Vestahir, Tunkezi Vestahirir. Gesharnagvi, Uzes Chuzes, Mish Pochvelov, Mish Sorvetsnelov, Gyankit Parelavelov. Panagan, Sovaragan, Mekomtir, Morsir. Pachtadaz Vorun, Inchin. Amenant, Irhadug Fatushne. April 20th. I feel thrown deep into a hole, ups and downs, a few days each. I'm happy I'm alive, and 20 years ago didn't take my life. Always worried of shame. I took care of, ignoring me. Gentle, careful, worry. Every year, more and more at peace. They did what they could and knew, and now I get to treat you. Kasan Abril. Nedvaz gskam, Khordzagi mech. Veri vare, Kani moras, Kani moran. Urachem vorvochchem, vor ksan dari arach, Yesim gyankis chari. Misht gmadahokvei, Have joren, Amoten. Hok gdanei, Andeselov yesinzi. Eskush ushatir, Mdahok. Amen dari, Aveli uli, Hashtevadz, vor grtsadznin kitsadznin rin. Yesal, Gernam Gorhima, Ramtsanel. February 14th, sex poem. Feels like tides, feels like the swell into the crazinesses, crevasses, and caves, whirling energy, panting, increasing heartbeat, smelling everything. Your body shakes, your body shivers, trembles, rumbles, more, so that more accumulates and more, accumulates into more, gorges and lakes, filling up to the brim, make way, melt away, fade, expanding my warmth capacity. Practice deepens. Try it. Like it? Fab. Not your thing? Leave it. Try something else. Breathe. If you're able, listen. Taste, observe, hear. Smell, taste, hear. For example, smell. Some, which are woven into with memories, so they live years, as stimulating, or of a person in that moment, or you yourself. Or another smell, invigorating. Your lungs open up, all of a sudden, there, wherever you were, there, when you encountered that smell. The reverse also stimulates, removing one of the senses, for example, sense of sight, or sense of hearing, or ability to touch, or ability to move. Back in my room with my circle, started opening my legs wide, winding up my circle more and more, like rolling your stash. Vibrating, shaking, my legs, highways of force. But no, it flows drop by drop. You even feel it, clustered, and I roll back down. The waves of breathing, of arteries, the smells, completely. Back, the ass clenched or unclenched, and again, a spark of bliss, as I release my nips now, once again like a wave, my toes, my shoulders, my ass, tense up, I feel them. When the waves comes, pains melt, pains from nipples, from the sides, inside they melt. It seems like the weightlifter does the same thing. To lift the heavy thing, breathe, tense the whole body. After a few breaths, it's as if their crevasses and crevices, having collected force, they lift, and the eruption for a few seconds lifts. Deep breath screams, a giggle, waves of laughter, a smile, still more air out than back in. Half a minute, again a wave. Dasnachors Pedvar, Kirkir Kertavadz. Marminet getochtara, marminet geshaji, getirtara, gerrera, aveli, ravelin, avelna, yev aveli, tirtaras, yev aveli, girger, yev liger, letzvin, letzvin, derdas, halis, haletzenes, taknalu garogutiuna lainatzenes, portsov gechoranan, portse, esnein shlav, chesires, sharnagim, urish pamma portse. Shinche, Gernasne lese, Hamdese, Naye lese, Hodda, Hamdese lese, Naye lese, Dese, Hamdese, Orinag hode, Vomank, Voronk, Hishogutun Gabbadan, Uraman Darinerov Getimanan, Iper Kirkirich, Gaman Vargani, Antsima Gam Tunkezi, Gam Urishima hode, Kirkere, Tokeret Gepatzvin, Megan kamen hot Hrayr, երբ հոդին հանդիպեցար, հագարակն ալ գկրկրե, ըսկայարան մը վերցնելով, օրինակ դեսողությունը, կամ լսողությունը, կամ թպնալու կարողություն, կամ շնչելու կարողությունը, յետսենյագս, գլորովս, ըսկսա ոտկերս լայն պանալով, ավելի լարելով գլորս, լարել, բեխտ վոլորելու բես, տրտրալով, թողթղալով, ոտկերս ուժի ուղիներ, բայց չէ, գատիլ գհոսի, կսկաս ալան գույդ և յետվար գկլդորիմ, ալիքները, շունչին, երագին, հոդերը, ամփոխջ, յետ որն է բինդը գամ թույլը և նորեն գայձի բես երախտահանգստությունը, երբ հիմա բդուգներս արցագեմ, նորեն ալիքի բես, ոտքիս մադերս, ուսս, որս, գբրգվիգոր, գսկամգոր, ալիքները, կաննե, ծավերը, գհալին, ծավերը, բդուգեն, գողեն, ներքին գհալին. Գարդս weightlifter-ն ալ, նույն պանը գնե, վերցնելու համար ձանր պանը, կշնչե, գլարե լման մարմինը, քանի մը շունչե ետք, գարձես, իր ձագն ու ձուգը, ուժ հավաքած գվերցնե, և ժայթկումը, քանի մը եկվարյան, վեր բահած գծկե, խորունկ շունչով բորալներ, խնթուգմը, խնթուգի ալիքներ, ժբիդ, թեր ավելի օդ թուրս կաններս, գեսվարյան, նորեն ալիք. Շնորհակալ եմ. Thank you.
Thank you, Hrayr. That was dope. Next, we have Nyri A. Bakkalian. Dr. Nyri A. Bakkalian is a novelist, recovering academic, raconteur, and your favorite history dyke. She earned her PhD in history from the University of Pittsburgh, and she's the author of Grey Dawn, A Tale of Abolition and Union, Balance of Seven Press, and hosts the podcast Friday Night History. Follow her on Twitter, Patreon, Twitch, and Gumroad at Riverside Wings. I think we could put some of those links in the chat. Nyri, you're up.
Parev, Paridesank. It's good to see you all. It's nice to see some familiar faces from many years ago too here. Even my cousin and namesake, Nyri Abrahamian, is in the audience. It's great to see you, cousin. So queer spaces are some of the last Armenian spaces I feel like I have a place. So it means a lot to me as a blue-haired, foul-mouthed, polytheistic transdyke to be here. So I have a confession. I don't write directly about Armenians and Armenian issues in my queer fiction, but what I've found myself doing is quintessentially Armenian, asking questions about the meaning of family and healing from trauma, and the question of whether you can truly come home. I have a project in development that's going to focus directly on Armenian characters. TLDR, it's an urban fantasy and it follows an Armenian American trans woman who discovers she's an heir to the power of the god Vahakan. But until now, I've written more indirectly about these questions of diaspora, home, language through my fiction. I'm going to read a scene from my novel Grey Dawn. Grey Dawn's about a time-traveling cis lesbian from the 1860s, a militant abolitionist named Chloe, who in 2020 crosses paths with and befriends, and in this scene has finally begun a relationship with a modern-day trans lesbian named Lee Hunter. Lee is a veteran of the US Army, and she's trying to figure herself out after her career radically shifted her politics leftward and also nearly killed her and ruined her health. And in battle in Derzor, she realized she had to transition or die. Lee is also Japanese American and a heritage speaker of her family's dialect. In this scene, we get a glimpse of home life the morning after she and Chloe first made love. Again, not directly about Armenians, but I suspect there will be some relatable issues at work here. Go back up here. Okay. We wandered down to the kitchen after a while. Even cozy feels have no power over hunger pangs. Hang on a moment. Hunger pangs when the nearest food is 3 floors down. We set to work making breakfast. I was cooking waffles while Chloe cautiously babysat the espresso pot. When Hiromi came down the stairs, sidebar, Hiromi is Lee's cousin, who she lives with, dressed for work. She paused in the kitchen doorway and looked from me to Chloe and back again. She tried to keep a straight face as she arched an eyebrow, but I could hear the laughter in her words. Mega kira kira shite mabushi. Your eyes are sparkling so hard it's blinding. Then in English, suspicious, very suspicious. Good morning, sunshine, I sang out. Waffles and shenanigans afoot. No shit, she smirked, making for the fridge. Leaning in, she furrowed her brow for a moment before retrieving a brown paper bag with her lunch for the day. I had an inkling of it last night, I think. There was that metaphorical steam coming out of my ears feeling again. Chloe sputtered. Hiromi, I really must apologize. Relax, Girl Scout, relax. She laughed, gesturing for Chloe to calm down. Relax and keep an eye on that coffee pot. Surely we must have caused some offense. Psst, relax. The house's walls don't always insulate sound well, but it isn't anything I haven't heard before. On top of that, I was kind of waiting for this to happen, kind of surprised it hadn't already. Chloe glanced up at me. Really? Serious pent-up big lesbian energy going on over here for a while now. Hiromi gestured between us. Now, gangway, let me at that coffee machine. She passed between us to retrieve the carafe from the quietly hissing coffee machine. Seriously, though, she said as she poured herself a travel mug. It's about damn time. Although, Lee, I guess that means you have to head back to work as usual pretty soon? My heart sank. I'd quite forgotten about that the night before. Yeah, I guess I do. Huh. I turned back to minding the waffle iron. Gotta get back to the grind. Tomorrow, I think. Go back, reclaim my desk, and all that shit. There was a moment of tense silence. Fun times, she quipped, embracing the suck. Yeah. Well, I'm off, Hiromi declared. Don't burn the house down with the flames of all that pent-up lovemaking now, you hear? Yeah, I rolled my eyes again. Hey, Chloe, we still on for round 2 of photo drone flight training? I'm ready whenever you are. Hiromi turned, fiddled with her bag, and then hefted it with a grunt. Ittekimasu. I'll be off now. Itterashai. See you when you get back. The Japanese words still sounded a little unwieldy coming from Chloe's lips. After the door thudded shut, I let myself exhale. For a little while longer, I'd averted an impossible conversation. You're getting better there, I remarked. With the Japanese, I mean. The coffee pot hissed and burbled. Chloe fumbled with the knob, but managed to switch off the gas range in short order. Am I really? Yeah, you are. But remember, an I is pronounced E. Itterashai. Itterashai, she said slowly. I shall try to remember that. I scraped out the final round of waffles. Good. You're learning quick. I'd like to learn it, darling girl. It's your other language. One of them, I nodded, warming my hands around one of the coffee mugs. But at any rate, it's the one I grew up with at home, aside from English. Well, she smirked. One more language for me to woo you in. I can see that I'm in trouble. Right you are. We adjourned to the table in the common room with dishes and mugs and breakfasted in the late morning sun. After a while, I put on some music and went back to the kitchen for a refill from the coffee machine. I just realized, Chloe observed on my return, gesturing at the low bookcases against the far wall. That's a bow sitting on top of the bookshelves, isn't it? Oh, yeah, that's a bow. I sat back down, but turned to look over the bow as I explained. It's a family heirloom. My great-great-great-grandfather, Mitsuya Toshikuni, carried this bow to war. What war was he in? The Boshin War, the Japanese version of the War of Rebellion. But in that war, the northern Japan, that is, lost. Did they all use bows? Not at all. His lord, Date Yoshikuni of Sendai, had an army that used bows, swords, Enfield rifles, Gatling guns, all at once. Chloe nodded slowly. It makes sense to use what's already at your disposal in a war, especially a war of insurrection. I sipped at my refilled coffee, then dunked a waffle in it to nibble at. The bow's been passed down in my family since then. I'm one of the first two since him to take up archery, and the first to go to war, and now it's mine. And you use the same bow? No, not at all. I shook my head. I've got my own gear, courtesy of one of my aunts in Japan. Can it still be used then? Oh, it can. I just don't feel like I can use it. Why is that? I wanted to tell her all of it just then. Too much pressure, I finally said. I was the first Mitsuya in 150 years to go to war, and the second in the same time to even bother taking a bow at all. I've got family on both sides of the Pacific who feel pretty damn strongly about that. Besides, say I did use this bow. What if I broke it? I'd have cousins from here all the way to Natori lining up to have my neck. Slowly, she set down her mug and squinted in contemplation, eyeing me, then the bow, then me again. I could practically hear her saying it. Lying doesn't become you, darling girl. What if you did it justice, though? She said. Huh? What if you do justice to your ancestors' legacy? I felt my cheeks burning. What if, indeed? Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Nyri. Next, we have Armen Davoudian, who is the author of Swan Song, which won the 2020 Frost Place chapbook competition and was recently published with Bull City Press. His poems and translations from Persian appear in AGNI, the Sewani Review, the Yale Review, and elsewhere. He grew up in Isfahan, Iran, and lives in California, where he is a PhD candidate in English at Stanford University.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kami, for the introduction. And I'm grateful to the Queer Armenian Library, Hye-Phen magazine, and IALA for bringing us all together in this space. And yeah, I think I'm just going to read 5 short poems, maybe less, depending on how time goes. I'm going to start the timer. Okay. This is Alibi. We sat together in the country where men like us can sit together like this. It was night, your blonde hair full of moonlight. You took one socked foot out of a loafer and held it in your hand. How easy then to have said, I love you. We drank from the same bottle. How easy to have meant it too. Later, in the obvious light of the train you're almost too late for, I can see again why we settled for what was difficult. Coming out of the shower, I shut my eyes under the scalding stream, scrubbing off last night's dream, when suddenly I hear your voice again, as though it caught in the clogged drain and was sent bubbling back up from the other world where you're not my mother. This time, it's really you. I'm really here. I blink. We do not disappear. Dad left, you say, to shower at the shop, so I don't need to stop just yet. And yet I do, unable to resume old customs, unlike you. In a one-bath, four-person household, we learned what we mustn't see, become in time so coolly intimate with one another's silhouette behind the opaque frosted shower screen that once more stands between us two. While at the mirror you apply foundation and concealer, I wash out my hair with rosewater shampoo, which means I'll smell like you all day. Mama, I shout, I'm coming out. And as you look away, I knot around me tight your lavender robe de chambre, cinching my waist, and clamber out of the tub, taking care not to step outside the cotton mat and drip on the cracked floor you've polished with such zeal. We are mirrored in each tile. Yet you'd forgive the spillage or forget. What else will you love me despite? So I grew up in Iran in an Armenian, in the Armenian community in Esfahan, and we went to Armenian high school, I guess, and so the students spoke Armenian, but most of the teachers didn't, which was great because Armenian sort of became the language of cheating during exams. And this is a sort of homage to that called cheat sheet. It's a poem, so it's fictional. Cheat sheet. In my all-boys school, they're all dumber than me. I sit in the back and read André Gide inside the elements of chemistry. I draw a naked girl with pointy breasts for my classmates, who fold her into a plane and fly it across the room. For the midterm, I make a cheat sheet in Armenian, which our Persian teachers cannot read. When the others leave, I stay with a friend to study. In the empty room, he unbuttons his uniform and then lies down, leaning over his body like Ali Baba over the thief's treasure. I copy out the answers on his chest with what I know even then is too much pleasure. And we've been told there will be a surge hour or coffee hour after this, and we can't have, I guess, real coffee, but I thought I'd read this sort of a light verse little poem I wrote about coffee, titled Coffee. Planted, ripened, handpicked, dried, seeded, skinned, polished, and sorted. Lesser crops disqualified, the balance graded and exported. Tested, some say analyzed, by slurping, then expectorated. Roasted until pyrolyzed, ground up, potted, irrigated, simmered, poured, sipped, and inverted, sedimented, and reverted, red and wildly fabricated, happy or sad, single or mated, and if illegible, no matter. The future is always black and bitter. And just check we're doing on time. Okay, I have two more poems left. This one is titled after I think one of the most popular novels in Persian called Uncle Napoleon. And I guess this novel is set in the 70s when, and it invents this phrase that became a euphemism for having sex. And the phrase is, let's go to San Francisco. So it's a really funny novel. There's a good English translation too, if you're interested. Okay, Uncle Napoleon. In the wealthiest country in the world, I sat with fair trade coffee and a novel in Persian. Here, literature was harmless. The pages curled in the internet-famous fog, while Uncle Napoleon wrote Hitler to report a British mole in Tehran, the roadside cobbler, a comic version of Blame the British, once banned for spreading perversion, to become a bestseller in Samizdat. When my uncle died, I already hated this country. Then there was you. What language is that? In leather harness and Uncle Sam goatee. I'll be the fresh recruit in our make-believe. It's simple. You're a tech executive. You're innocent. You're guilty. You're alive. And I guess another poem about a book. I swear they're not all about books, but so this one, I mean, I feel like a lot of you may have had the experience, might know those books in parallel translation that you sort of read when studying a language, where you have one language on one page and then the translation on the other page, and they're facing each other. So I was reading a parallel translation of a Persian romance called Lillian Majnun, which is just this really sad love story, kind of like between star-crossed lovers like Romeo and Juliet. And okay. And yeah, I guess thanks again for sticking around. Lillian Majnun, bilingual edition. Reading two languages facing each other like lovers separated by the stars, an ancient feud or a despotic father. I thought of handsome, bearded Mr. Parse, our ambidextrous teacher in 5th grade, who wrote the verses to the left in white, followed by blue meanings to the right, until the board resembled the striped spread I'd sweat my lumpen love out on each night, then lie there with my hands unwashed and read the same tale of a madman's virgin love, who once more roams the desert in search of the dead beloved he will never reach. When I close the book, the two tongues touch. Thanks.
Thank you, Armenian, for sharing all of that. Last but not least, we have Lillian Avedian. Lillian Avedian is an Armenian American journalist and poet from Los Angeles, California. Journey to Datev, published with Girls on Key Press, is her first poetry collection. She serves as a staff writer for the Armenian Weekly. Her writing also appears in the Los Angeles Review of Books, HITK, and the Daily Californian. She is currently pursuing master's degrees in journalism and Near Eastern Studies at New York University. Welcome, Lillian.
Thank you so much, Kami. I just want to start by saying how awed I am by all of the art that has been shared today. You've all given me so much to reflect on, so Thank you. So today I'm going to be reading 4 poems from my debut poetry collection, Journey to Datev. So the collection generally, thank you, it generally follows the plot line of a young woman traveling through Armenia with her mother. So I'm going to start by reading the first 2 poems in the collection. So this is poem number 1. Mass at center of chest that rattles headboard each evening. Do you fear rejection? Crumpling into spine, bones creak, joints kiss, organs balloon, innards stretch so that skin is so taut it may burst. The wheels on the bus turn us to the left toward the sunrise. My mother clutches my hand. No need to be afraid, Mom. We will make it there in time. There are lines on her face where years of travel and migration and work and children have slid charcoal pencils across her skin. Do you see the trees outside the window? The prettiest scenery lies along these roads outside of Yerevan. Green is the friendliest color. Do you hear the wheels beating the dirt? That sound is at the core of everything. Spinning wool, gushing rivers, turning pages, eroding hills, flying gunshots, badum, badum, badum. The lines on her face turn from black to green. Don't worry, Mom, we will make it okay. The tree branches kiss and retreat, kiss and retreat. The leaves unveil and hide gold patches of air. A girl once told me that my eyes shone gold like the sun. I am too godly for the sun, assuming stillness of hardcover book, encased seed, frozen meat. We need to remember to buy something for your grandmother during our trip. Maybe a chain for her green cross. Who imbued such power in rotting flesh that bends at each crease? Badum and collapse. Fold at the sight of moon's light, poet's wish, glint in her eyes. Stroke tattered pages, water burgeoning kernels, defrost tender piece size of fist. That cross is so ugly. I am so afraid. All right, this is poem number 2. My grandmother brought that cross to the United States from Iran. Along dirt roads and train tracks and hurtling waves and security gates and interviews and stained carpets, the cross jingles. Borders are fragile things. Green veins branch along my mother's wrists. What is your favorite childhood memory? Days on the beach. Sandy toes, sandy skin, skins of watermelons and seeds in sand. The Caspian Sea and the strip of green where the people of Nur live. I shut my eyes and think of green and Nur. What do the trees look like? I cannot say. I taste the sand and envision. What is your favorite childhood memory? A stage, a powerful spotlight, a rainbow gown and tickly lashes, sweat under arms, glare in eyes, my mother's face, smiling. I shall make you proud. I shall radiate like rainbows. I shall ascend above the trees and the rest so that you shall know the treks across the seas and the years were worthwhile. I shall soar. I open my mouth wide. No, I never liked that cross. Blink. I look out the window at mountains painted with wildflowers. All right, so now I'm going to read poem number 15 from the collection, which is just another scene from their road trip. The landscape changes. Mom, look outside of the window. Every morning I stare out of the window. I see sun, I see light, the day beckons. I see the stones I must swallow rotting in belly. I see large stone that swallows everything. I see. One morning she sat across the table, muttered, marriage is between a man and a woman. My own face, captured in red stone of mountains. I could be still, like the mountains, unbothered by the larger stone. Between a man and a woman, whispers in the morning. I could mimic the vulnerability of the mountains, bear my ugly rock center to the sun, accept with lovely stillness the wear, the theft, the wreck to follow. Do the mountains feel pain? Wind carries rubble into the blue. I am a dent on the mountainside. I float and flee like rubble, retreating into thin air. I turn my face to see the green, think, I will turn back and the green will be gone. And so it is. Look outside of the window. Mother, mountains vanish. All right, now for my last poem that I'll be sharing, I thought in honor of Pride Month, I would read a poem that I wrote about my first coming out conversation. This is poem number 41 from the collection. Here it is tumultuous as a horizon. Stillness encases shouts, smothered by water, dry as wordless flat line, balancing, pasts drowning, erupting into futures, desires bubbling, bursting into deaths. If I stand still, I might as well be dead. It is then that I realized that we can choose to do what makes us happy. The control rests within us. Do you see? Edging from horizon toward the coast, floating on desires, death's ripple beneath belly, behind sight. Only see point of blue, promise of distant world beyond sight. If I lie here, I am a liar. I have an image in my head of what my life could look like, but so much could go wrong if I bring that image out into the world. The future I want feels out of my control. Is there something you are trying to tell me? Dive toward sand, foaming at mouth, currents coursing to and from wet heart, swelling with truth, the only thing I have ever known. I'm gay. Really? Roll, squint, smile, lick, spit, stones, inhale to shout, roll toward coast, to sea, to horizon, settle back into chaos of constant battle, relinquish momentary control. It will only be more difficult from now on, but today our eyes lit up. All right, that's all I prepared for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Thank you, everybody. It was really hard to hold back from responding to everybody's piece, but I hope a lot of you will stay behind for the Surge Hour. So thank you so much to all the readers for sharing their work and all of the audience members for coming as well. Just a quick shout out to Flo Lowe for designing the poster for today's reading also, and to Cyrus and Arthur for handling the tech. Olivia, did you wanna? We can't hear you, love. I really thought we would get away with not saying you're on mute today, but.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much to all the readers who just, you've blown me away with your work. I hope you will be able to join us next Saturday at the same time for Arachiner, or firsts, reading and discussion among LGBTQ Armenian writers about the development of queer Armenian literature over the past few generations. Participants include Arlena Vakian, Armen of Armenia, Kami Abrahamian, Lee Williams Budakian, Michael Barakiva, and Nancy Agabian. And it's sponsored in part by poets and writers and the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. And I hope you'll join us now for an informal sourge and conversation hour. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions to our readers. I see a few questions already in the chat. We'll turn off the recording and get to know each other a little bit. Thank you all again.